Chapter 13. The underground passage smelled of damp earth and rusted metal, a labyrinth of old maintenance tunnels that had long been forgotten. Their escape had been a miracle, one Ethan did not take lightly. Daniel kept close at his side, eyes darting over every shadow, his youthful face lined with exhaustion. The woman they had saved, her name was Lena, was limping between them, biting her lip to keep from crying out. Pastor Robert Hayes led the way, a flashlight guiding their path. His movements were quick but careful. He had lived in this world longer than most believers still left behind, long enough to understand that survival didn't come from the recklessness, but wisdom. "We have a checkpoint not far from here," Hayes murmured over his shoulder, "a place where others have gathered, people like us." Ethan nodded, adjusting Lena's arm over his shoulder. "How many?" Hayes hesitated before answering. "Fewer than before." Ethan did not need to ask what that meant. A sudden metallic clang echoed through the tunnel, making them freeze. Daniel reached for Ethan's arm. "Dad!" Ethan held up a hand. "Quiet." The noise had come from behind, footsteps, more than one set, moving with purpose. Ethan's pulse pounded. They were being followed. Hayes clicked off the flashlight. The tunnel plunged into darkness. "Move," Ethan whispered. They ran. Boots pounded on the ground behind them, gaining speed. A single red light flickered ahead, an exit sign, barely visible. Ethan pushed Daniel forward. "Go." Daniel did not hesitate. He darted ahead, slipping through the narrow door at the end of the tunnel. Hayes followed, pulling Lena with him. Ethan turned, ready to slam the door shut, but it was too late. A figure lunged at him, slamming him against the wall. A masked enforcer. Ethan swung instinctively, his fist connecting with the jawbone. The enforcer staggered back, but another took his place, landing a blow to Ethan's ribs. Pain exploded through his side, but he didn't stop. He fought. Then a gunshot rang out. The enforcer collapsed. Ethan looked up, breathless. Robert Hayes stood there, gun in hand, his face grim. "Come on," the pastor said, voice low, "before more come." Ethan didn't argue. They slipped through the door, locking it behind them. They had barely made it out, and this war was just beginning. Celeste stood at her window, looking down at the darkened city below. The Global Unification Initiative controlled everything now. The streets, the food supply, the people. And yet, it wasn't enough. She felt it in her bones. The resistance was growing. People were fighting back, even when the odds were impossible. And Adrian was watching her more closely than ever. She could feel it. The weight of his gaze, the way he spoke to her with measured patience, like he was testing her loyalty. She wasn't stupid. She knew the kind of power he wielded. And yet, she touched the cross necklace hidden beneath her collar. What am I doing? A knock at the door made her jump. She turned as Adrian walked in, his presence commanding as always. "Busy?" he asked smoothly. Celeste swallowed. "No." He studied her, his dark eyes unreadable. "I need you to do something for me." She waited, heart pounding. "Find Ethan Matthews." Her stomach twisted. Adrian stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You're one of the few people I trust. Don't let me down." Celeste forced a smile. "I won't." But as he left, she knew time was running out. One wrong move, and she wouldn't be able to walk away from this alive. Adrian Lucero stood before a wall of screens in the dimly lit control room, the glow from the monitors casting sharp shadows across his face. His enforcers had failed him, again. The latest escape of Ethan Matthews had been a personal affront, one he could not afford to overlook. His fingers drummed rhythmically against the edge of the table as he watched the live feeds from various drones and security cameras sweeping the city. The red dots on the digital map flickered, representing different units moving through the streets like hunters, seeking prey. Matthews had to be found. Not just because he was a loose end, but because Adrian despised loose ends. His jaw tightened. There was a time when order had been respected. Now, it had to be enforced. People like Matthews, people who still clung to the old ways, were nothing more than relics of a failed system, a system built on weakness. Adrian turned away from the screens, his sharp gaze shifting to the single image pinned on the far wall, a grainy surveillance photo of Ethan and his son Daniel disappearing into the shadows. It should have been over by now. He exhaled slowly, then tapped a button on his communicator. Status update. A crackle of static, then a voice of his lead enforcer came through. Still tracking them, sir. They escaped through an underground system. We're narrowing down possible exits. Adrian clenched his teeth. The incompetence was grating. Narrow it down faster. Yes, sir. He ended the transmission and sat back, steepling his fingers in thought. Matthews was careful, but not invincible. Eventually, he would make a mistake, and Adrian would be there when he did. His mind shifted to Celeste. She was useful, yes, but she was also unpredictable. He had sensed the flickers of doubt in her lately, the hesitation in her voice when she reported back to him. He couldn't afford hesitation. Adrian smirked, shaking his head. If Celeste was smart, she would do what was necessary. She would choose the winning side before it was too late. If not, well, even those he trusted weren't immune to consequences. The sky stretched endlessly before Claire, a breathtaking expanse of radiant colors, but she barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on the earth below, on the turmoil unfolding like a terrible storm. She could see them, Ethan, moving cautiously through the ruins of a world that had turned against him. Daniel, struggling to be brave despite the fear pressing against his young heart. Celeste, battling her own demons, her soul pulled in two directions. And then there was Adrian. Claire frowned as she gazed at him, sensing the thick darkness that clung to his every move. He thought he was in control. He believed his power made him untouchable. But he had no idea what was coming. The unseen realm around her shimmered, shifting as angelic warriors moved in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed, swords burning with heavenly fire, prepared for the battles ahead. One of the angels turned towards her, his piercing eyes filled with knowledge of things yet to unfold. It is beginning. Claire nodded solemnly. They don't know what they're up against. They will. She turned her gaze back towards Ethan and Daniel. The battle below was growing fiercer, but they were not alone. They had never been alone. With a deep breath, Claire whispered a prayer, one that wrapped Ethan like a shield, strengthening him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. And far below, as Ethan clutched Claire's old Bible, he felt something shift in his spirit. A whisper of strength, a surge of courage, a reminder that the war was far from over, and neither was hope.